Do we have anybody in the audience that wants to comment on the items on closed session?
None right there.
Seeing none, do we have any online? Nothing sent in email or anything either? All right, then we'll adjourn to closed session. No. All right, we will call the meeting of the Ripon City Council back into session. Mr. Terpstra, can you report out on the closed session?
Members of the council and public, City Council met in closed session prior to tonight's regular meeting to receive an update on potential litigation and to give staff direction. That direction was given and no further reportable action was taken.
Thank you. If everyone could stand and join me in the pledge and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morris, thankful resident of Ripon and pastor of Christ Community Church, and grateful to be able to pray this evening. Dear God in heaven, thank you that you are real and you are here right now. I thank you for evidence of your goodness all throughout your creation. Thank you for evidence of your existence. Everywhere we look, we can see your handiwork. I thank you for your good gifts to us, including the good gift of government. Thank you for how government is good for us as a community. I thank you for the blessing even of our particular local government. And so I pray for these men and women with the decisions they have to make. Will you guide them to do what is best for our community? I pray they would make wise decisions. I pray they would continue to direct Ripon in a way that would be beneficial for us all. I pray for those who are part of our local government who work and serve day in and day out, including those who are in dangerous positions at times, like our first responders, for our city employees who have jobs that could be hazardous. I pray for their protection, and I pray that you would cause them to be able to have safe days and days where they serve our community well. I am most grateful, although it is good for us to have a wonderful community and a clean town and all these things that we enjoy, good services. These are good gifts from you, but I am particularly grateful to you for the best gift of all that we have in Jesus Christ, crucified, buried, and risen again. And I pray in his name this evening. Amen.
Amen. Can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Mike Versusha. Dean Euchre. Here. Gary Barton.
Present.
Vice Mayor Daniel DeGraff. Here. Mayor Leo Zuber.
Here. Next item on the agenda is public discussion. If there's anyone here who would like to address the council on items that are not on the agenda, now is the time. None? Do we have any online? All right. Moving on. Approval of the minutes for the last regular meeting and a special meeting on the 24th.
So move.
Whoa. You're logged out? I guess.
May have to do
Now, here we go,
Our
Lord.
thing's not.
his computer's logged on.
I have no idea.
Dean, you need to, oh, you did. Never mind.
Technology is a wonderful thing.
Sometimes.
Now what? You go for it.
30 seconds already up, Gary. That's Jeopardy for all of you youngins.
What am I typing in? That?
Nope.
Oh. Okay. Not because of anything I did, trust me. All right. Moving on. Motion carries. Next is approval of the agenda as posted. Are there any items on the consent calendar that anyone wants to pull for discussion? None, then I would entertain a motion to
I would-
approve the agenda.
I would like to
Oh,
pull
you have
item
one.
1.2A, please.
1.2A.
For discussion or pulling it off?
Oh. It's going to be
For
for separate
discussion.
action. No others, then I would approve, a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So, second.
Motion carries, and then can we approve the consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Still waiting.
You need to move it first.
Oh, there it is. All right, and item 1.2A. Lisa,
Yes, I just had an update to the general matters invoices that was included in the packet. So I did put one on your dais. The amount changed from $9,292.50 to $8,260 for a total to be paid to the law office of Thomas Terpstra of $11,905.46.
What happened?
It was a misbill.
I'll move to approve the bill.
Second.
all right.
Yeah,
I gotta find the next page I'm on. Hold on.
that would be funny. Oh, no, no.
All right, I need our special guests up front. Mr. Wright, and all your players. Just line up right here. Is it on? Okay. This is part of the meeting that I enjoy the most. Tonight, we're recognizing some of our Ripon High School athletes for some very successful activities this year. The boys golf team, which is not here, were the Division V section champions this year. The swimming and diving team, who are the swimmers? They were the Division III section champions this year. Don't ask me to explain how the difference in divisions for the same school, because it's complicated as all get out. And we're also recognizing Clara Schoolen, who this year, it was in the state, correct? Placed sixth in the high jump. For a girl from a school like Ripon to do that well, she deserves, as well as the other ladies, a lot of credit. So on behalf of the city, I want to extend our congratulations to all of you. Please convey back to the coaches that we also want to recognize the work, time, and effort that they put in for the girls and the boys. And hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of athletes up here over the course of the future. Anybody have anything to say? No? All right. Oh, where's my envelopes? We have some Okay, moving on. Item 2, public hearings on the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. Mr. Werner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. the purpose of the city budget, as the council's aware, is to allocate the funding to meet city council priorities. To get to this point, we go through a process. The process starts with a strategic planning meeting, which we held back in April. And then tonight is the public hearing for the proposed 24-25 budget. I'm planning to really just highlight different parts of the budget. Obviously, there's a lot of different funds that we use to manage the services we provide and paying for those services. So if you want to talk more about a specific fund or you have questions, please stop me and let me know. After the hearing tonight and any comments I get or feedback I get, I'll update the budget and send out to the city council probably early next week with my memo that goes along with it, trying to summarize the budget and then the details of the budget. And then we're planning to have that on the July agenda for the city council consideration. Overall, the budget is a balanced budget and it funds all debt obligations of the cities and the important capital projects we'll talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about the overall city budget, general fund, enterprise funds, landscape and lighting districts, and the capital improvement plan. This is a screen I won't go over in detail, but for anyone who looks at our treasurer's report or our audits or even the budget, we try to keep this in all of our documents. It's almost a roadmap to the funding that we receive and options for the council in transferring funds, and then what the funds are used for as part of the city operations. So if you want some detail about how we use our operating funds, our capital funds, and our restricted funds, this gives you that detail. We also try to be consistent with the terminology we use. So in our staff reports as well, we'll use the same terms that we try to use the same terms that are on this sheet.
Kevin, I'm just gonna say what I say every year. I think this thing is, when you put that together the first time, extremely helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that came from a request from the council, but so yeah, yeah. But I think it worked out well, and we continue to use it in a lot of the different reports we do. So the overall city operating budget does not include our bond obligations, capital improvements, capital replacement. But the overall proposed budget for 24-25 is 27.2 million. That is about a 7.7% increase from last year. The funds that have had the largest increases is the Street and Road Fund and the PFFP Capital Fund. Really, street and roads, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that fund, but we've been trying to put more resources into street and road projects. There's a $1.5 million project that just went out to bid for south of Maine near Vera and Jack Tone. So there's some additional cost to manage that capital project. And then Public Works has been doing some additional work with crack filling. So you see that represented here. And then the PFFP capital funds, that includes some of the work that's happening in support of the SSJD surface water connection and some of the consulting fees with that. That same number, that 27.2, this shows how it is allocated between salaries, burden, which burden is healthcare costs, retirement costs, the taxes associated with salaries, workers' comp insurance that we're required to have. Then our operational needs, this is all the gas, electricity, et cetera, overhead, and the redevelopment obligations that we have. So that's the 27.2 million and how it's spread up. You can see the biggest increase is in the burden. And a lot of that is related to insurance. So full-time staffing levels, you can see from 2008 and through the recession. Before the recession, we had about 91 employees. After the recession, we got to about 78 employees and really stayed there for a pretty long time. We really spent a lot of effort to maximize the employees we had and not have to hire more employees. We did that through technology. We did that sometimes through consultant agreements. But over the last couple of years, we have had an increase in the number of staff. Right now, we're at 90 full-time employees, and with this budget, we're proposing one new full-time employee to go to 91. And really, the biggest increase in staffing that we saw in 2023 was related to taking on the Lathrop contract. So we've added 7 employees with that contract alone. Also, in that same year, we added 2 regulatory compliance individuals, full-time staff, to help, and we'll talk about this in the budget too, with the increased demand we have to comply with various regulatory compliance issues that we have. And then we also added a sworn officer that same year to the budget. Last year in 2024, as part of the current year's budget, we did add a CSO, code enforcement officer, who has done a lot of proactive enforcement throughout the community. So we're at 91 full-time employees that's being proposed with this budget. Sorry, I don't know where to point sometimes.
You know, Kevin, can I go back a minute? You know, it'd be nice if you can add the totals on the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Just because I'm trying to figure out what the totals are year to year, and it'd be easy.
Yeah.
Huh?
You can't add those? Yeah, I just can't remember.
Oh, I see. Okay. I'll add those. So one of the full-time employee that's being proposed is hiring a maintenance worker to perform the concrete replacement and asphalt replacement throughout the city. This is something for the past few years we've been hiring outside contractors to do. Concrete replacement, the contractor we've been using and had very good success with, he retired and no longer in business. We went out and got bids, and they came in substantially higher than what we've been receiving. And then the asphalt replacement, this is for replacing cold patches after public works crews come in and do water line replacement or any sort of utility work in the roadway. So we put in there what we pay in a typical year, which is about $106,000. And for the concrete replacement, that is with the lowest bid of a new contractor. It wasn't with our previous contractor. James and I sat down and estimated if we hired one new employee, and he also used essentially an apprentice to help him with the concrete replacement and asphalt replacement, what would that cost for the work to be completed by the city? And we had certain assumptions in there. I won't go into all of that, but it was about a $58,000 savings to the street and road fund if we did that. Obviously, you can see in this, the employee would not be full-time in street and roads doing this work all of the time. But James and I did talk, and there was other opportunities in street and road where he could be working. We're doing more with crack filling. There's a larger cracks. We're trying to develop a methodology of how to replace those. So there's enough work to keep this employee full-time in street and roads. So the overall impact to street and roads is about $50,000 a year. And that is after the savings, the $58,000.
Full-time too?
He's already in street and roads doing street and road responsibilities.
We could probably even get the material cheaper by ourselves as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, you don't pay the markup
Yeah.
on that. So that's the proposal in this budget, is hiring that new full-time employee to do this work. Retirement plan, as you know, we have 2 different retirement plans. We have a defined benefit for our sworn officers and a defined contribution for all of our other employees. That is very unique for municipalities. Most all have a defined benefit, which some refer to as CalPERS. You can see the cost. This is updated for 24-25, but we've seen some pretty substantial increases in the CalPERS payments. And the top table shows for the different tier of CalPERS employees we have as sworn officers, what we pay per employee. And then below that is for those in the defined contribution, the 66 other employees we have in the city. They get a contribution into their, I call it a 401k. It's really for on the government side, it's a 401a. But they could do a 15 to 18.3% contribution from the city. Essentially, the city matches half an employee's contribution up to 6.6%. So that's how they get to 18%. That works out to be close to $15,000 an employee. So PERS, I mentioned that there's been pretty significant increases over time. The red column on there is our PERS payment over the years since 16, 17, and then we project out over the next 5 years what those would be. But most recently in 23, 24, our PERS payment, this is normal costs and our unfunded liability payment, was $600,000. 24, 25, it's going up to $750,000. And then at the end of the projection here in 28, 29, PERS is telling us to expect $850,000 of a payment.
Are they dropping their actuarial rate? Is that why? Are they continuing to step that down?
I'm not sure what led to that in the actuarials we received, but this was from the actuarials. I'm not sure if we noticed why.
Usually it's the rate or you reduce the amortization or something like that.
Right.
Typically what drives it.
Yeah,
Okay,
we could
that's
look
what
into it more. We have
just
all
curious.
the data. A few years ago, in 22, 23, the city council approved a 115 trust, which it gives us some other options of investing funds that we normally don't have in hopes of getting a better return. We funded that with some reserve money that was set aside to pay CalPERS payments, and then we used RDA bond proceeds to increase that. So you can see what we're expecting with the green line from 22, 23 to the end of this period. We're hoping or projecting that to be close to $3 million at the end of this period. The red dash line is our unfunded liability balance. So it's about $6 million. PERS is telling us it's going to go down a little bit over time. That remains to be seen. But this is something that staff is planning to track, our 115 trust balance versus the unfunded liability balance, and have discussions of how best to leverage that money to benefit the city finances. So this is not the first time you're going to see it, but we'll start sharing this on a more frequent basis and having these discussions, because it is going to be a tool in the future of mitigating the increases in PERS in some way. And I think we talked about this, it's been a while though, but the 115 trust, you are limited. Once the money is in there, it could only go for funding a PERS financial responsibility. It could go to your normal costs, you could pay your UAL payments, or you could pay down your unfunded liability as well. So we have some options with that money. Health and welfare, we've been working really hard to try to keep that reasonable. The last couple of years, we've seen some larger increases, but overall in the insurance market, whether it's healthcare, car insurance, house insurance, property insurance, liability, workers' comp, they're all substantially going up. And we're seeing that right now with health and welfare as well. Overall, since over the last 10 years, we've seen about $80,000 a year increases, about 5.7% on the average. Our employees are paying a share of the health and welfare benefits. Right now, it's about $80,000 a year that's coming from the city employees to offset these expenses. So different investments. There's been a unique opportunity with government investments with the bond market right now. So we added we've always had LAIF, we've always had Bank of New York. We added the 115 Trust a few years ago that I mentioned, but we did add CAMP a couple years ago, maybe a year or two ago now, as another option to invest money, trying to increase the return on our investments. Typically, it's around 1%, and you can see on the very bottom, average over the last 3 years has been about 1.2%. Total return for all city funds is about $743,000. But being more aggressive with CAMP and some of these other investments, we more than doubled that. We're at almost 2.45% in that creating a return of 1.675 million we're estimating at the end of this fiscal year.
Kevin, remind me of why we have such a substantial net amount with Bank of New York being a well below market return.
We talked about taking money out, but once we take the money out of that, we'll realize some losses in there. So they advised us to leave the money in there. You know, you don't have the loss until you pull the money out. So if we pull some money out, we're going to be realizing some losses.
Is there longer term investment?
They're longer term investments.
So we're upside down.
We're upside.
I've asked a question.
But if you pull it out and make significantly more, maybe you can bypass.
Well, you could
at
do
some
that.
point.
You could do that math where you can make more money than you can for loss. I have a question, Kevin, if I can, on the camps. The math isn't working. We got 30 million at camps at 5%. That's $1.5 million. How do you have 650 there?
It was
half
not-
a year?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was not in there the full year.
Full year.
That's half a year or something?
You're right.
But does that also take into consideration the interest on the CDs that get paid at the end? Did you include all that in there, or is that separate from that? Well, monthly you show us our returns, but you don't show us the interest on the CDs because it gets paid
At the end of
at
the
maturity. Is that?
So that does not show there because we're cash basis, so we do not have that money in our account.
So it's more than this? Okay, okay.
And then we're about to get money from that, and then we're looking at other opportunities. Lisa and I go through an exercise where we look at capital projects and the financial needs of the city and what we need available as cash versus what can be invested. So we've been trying to maximize those long-term investments with CAMP. So general fund, majority of the money we get is from taxes, about 54%. The total budget for 24-25 is $17.68 million. Sales tax, property tax, motor vehicle in lieu, recreation fees, and development-related fees are typically some of our larger revenue sources to the general fund. They make up about 60% of the total general fund revenue. Just to talk about those and what I assumed in this year's budget real quick. Sales tax since 1920 to what's being proposed in the 24-25 budget, it's increased or varied between $3.3 and $4.5 million. And like we talked about before, a lot of that is related to the price of fuel. For the 24-25 budget, I assumed a 2.4% increase. You could see between 22 and 23, there was a reduction. It was about a 6% reduction in sales tax. I think when we budgeted it, we budgeted more on the order of 10%. So we're budgeting a little bit of a rebound for 24-25. Property tax has been fairly stable over this period. Over the last 5 years was about 4%. We're assuming a 4% increase for, sorry, I have increase from 23-24. Motor vehicle in lieu, 5.8% was the annual increases over the last 5 years. Assumed a 5% increase in the 24-25 budget. Recreation, during COVID was a real low time impacted by revenue. So you could see we rebounded, and especially with the contracts we have with TPR and Rage Volleyball, we've seen some increases in revenue there. We're assuming a 2.3% increase. And then development related, it goes up and down. It's varied between $600,000 and $300,000 since 22-23. For the budget, I usually maintain a conservative $250,000 because it's unpredictable. And $250,000 is what we were receiving as revenue during the recession.
I know it's going to be unrelated. I'm going to be wrong, but I'm going to ask a question. So you show a large increase in PFFP, I think. Doesn't that come from building?
Right.
But if that's going up 100%, wouldn't that go up?
So that was expenses. The large increase was expense, PFFP expenses.
Okay. Okay.
And you're always, I mean, you look at the difference between the number there, the 617 to 311. I mean, if you're saying 250, it's pretty conservative, right?
Right.
Don't
Very,
know.
very conservative, yeah.
Development
that's
might not come, but that's just an added bonus if you get the 617,000 or 800,000 or whatever. It's all gonna be, it's likely gonna be higher than that, but it's a
Yeah.
conservative assumption, assuming not very much development happens next year.
And that's kind of
Could
what,
very well happen, but,
Right.
good. Is that if you get paid on it?
you know, yeah, exactly.
just a little bit more on sales tax. So this is a calendar by calendar year. This is how we get our report. So it's a little different numbers than what you just saw, but it tells a message of the variability that we see in sales tax, which again is the blue line, the blue columns. The line above that is the average sale price of fuel. So you can see how we are very dependent on that. And then what we have recently saw in the calendar year 2023, really all categories of sales tax producing businesses in Ripon, we're seeing reductions. So first half of 2024, we've seen a rebound of that, start seeing improvements in that. But for 2023, compared to 2022, we did see across the board reductions in sales tax revenue. The other thing that we watch very closely is the gallons of fuel being sold. Over the years, it has gone down. Back in calendar year 2008, it was close to 470,000 gallons of fuel being sold. In 2016, at kind of the midpoint there, was 405,000 gallons, was really the highest year since the recession. And then now we're at about $350,000. So you can see a couple of years of starting to get a little higher, but we have seen a reduction in volume. On the revenue side, we have not seen this type of decline really because of the price of fuel. It's still so high. We haven't seen some of those declines, but this is really the reason we have been really focused on the economic development efforts of the planning department and watching this very closely because it's an important revenue source. General fund budget, this is on the expense side, $16.8 million. Some of the biggest increases is in the administration, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier with insurance. This is where we code the property insurance, liability insurance, and we've seen some pretty significant increases with those. The one thing I would note with planning, engineering, and police, we compare what the budget is versus what we were last fiscal year, what I'm projecting where we were last fiscal year. All three of those departments had a variety of staffing issues, whether it was employees out on disability, vacancies in those departments. So really those vacancies and the reduction of expenses in 23-24 is really what led to those larger increases in those departments. Overall, it's about a 10% increase from last fiscal year for the total expense of the general fund. Midland Sports Park, again, a lot of effort and focus has been on trying to recover as much of the expense of maintaining that sports park as possible. The last 3 years, we have been recovering about 80% of the expenses on that sports park. We do not charge our own recreation programs for that. If we did, we would probably be collecting more than 90% of the expenses to the sports park. So we've come a long ways since the early years of recovering 50% of those expenses.
That savings would go to the citizens, right?
Right. Yeah.
And otherwise you'd charge more money.
Right.
Right.
General fund also supports a number of outside organizations, outside of the municipal government, I should say. There's a Chamber of Commerce donation included in the budget. Almond Blossom, we staff and support the Chamber of Commerce with that event. Senior Center building, we maintain that and provide the staffing. We have a League of Cities payment we make every year, San Joaquin Partnership payment we make. We maintain and pay the utilities on the museum. And then the library, we do all the building maintenance and we pay the operating expenses. we match the operating expenses of the city of Stockton and county of San Joaquin. And then we have a hazmat agreement with the fire district that we pay into for them to provide hazmat services. And then we share in the cost of the aquatic center with the school district. Street and roads, I'm not going to go into a lot of this. We've talked about this so much, but this has been a focus of the city council. And the biggest challenge has been we have a limited amount of funding. We have very little options of how to increase that funding because of some of the maintenance of effort limitations that we have with that. And we have a lot of roads that are in poor condition. So it has really been a challenge with the funding we have to prevent those roads from failing further, and the ones that require expensive reconstruction to go do that. So there's been a number of important policy changes from the council to try to address this. The first one is the Street and Road Reserve Fund. Every year there's a surplus in the general fund. 33% of those funds are transferred to that account. So right now we have about $2.9 million in that account to go to reconstruction of road projects. And then most recently, there was another policy change by the council where there's a calculation we do now that when there's a net savings in the street and road fund, we split that net savings. One of the things that we talked about in this year's strategic planning meeting was to set up a capital project schedule, goals, if you will, to try to do a project in each of these areas every 20 years. So we divided the city into 7 areas. We're estimating at a high level that these are about $2 to $3 million of projects in each area. Some may be a little more, maybe some less. Area 1 we have put out to bid. That was about 1.5 or $1.6 million. And then in fiscal year 26, 27, we're planning to do area 2, which is the Rapona area and other roads south of Colony and west of North Ripon Road. Enterprise funds, we're in our last year of a rate study. Those last rates will go in effect February 2025, and then we'll have to go through that Prop 218 another time for the next 5-year period. Most of the water and sewer are doing fairly well. The one we've had challenges with is the garbage operating fund, and that's really because of regulatory expenses. I look back a couple of years ago, we were estimating about $50,000 of regulatory expenses being charged to that fund. Now we're at $289,000. We're still able to do a transfer about $50,000, but that is quite a bit less than what was recommended in our initial five-year study. So we'll go through that process here starting in February 2025, around that time.
Kevin, is that the regulatory expense on garbage and operating? Was there an upload for us to get started with that? I mean, is it going to continue that heavy every year?
It's going to get worse.
Yeah, well, this year went up quite a bit because of the SB 13.
Yeah. I think passed in 2014.
Yeah, and a lot of those are disposal fees, or tipping fees.
That's right. Yep. But okay.
And then miscellaneous funds, landscaping district. As you know, we have some districts that were created a long time ago that were not inflated. And over time, the expenses have exceeded the revenue. And then we have some more recent ones where we did increase the assessment with inflation. Overall, we're estimating a transfer to be about $77,000 from the general fund to make up the difference in the districts that do not have the sufficient revenue to cover the expenses. And then lighting district. We've been a long ways with this project, and this is a figure I've showed to the council a couple times. was established in 04, 05, I believe around that time. And you can see revenue and expenses over the years, and the black line is the fund balance. The yellow line on here correlates to the right side of the graph, and that's the balance of the fund over time. So since it was started, it has been operating in the negative. In 1819, we were working with PG&E really to audit our financial records and what we were paying for electricity on streetlights. And also PG&E switched out high pressure sodium lights for LED lights. Since 1819, we have seen a significant increase in the balance of that fund, but with some of the more recent increases to energy rates, we're projecting over the next 5 years to lose that good momentum and that positive balance and go back down. And it's really, we don't have a lot of capital needs within the lighting district. The bulb replacement and all that is funded through the budgeting process, and we go out and do those. Really, the largest capital need we have is a boom truck that we use to do that, and we've had the same boom truck since probably 07 when we started the lighting district. So what I'm recommending is that the city council direct staff to bring back a rate study with some options of how to deal with this. We could look at just adding a index going forward from this point. We could look at resetting the dollar per square foot or single family equivalent, the $42, establishing a new number, or maybe some combination of those. But we could bring back some options for the city council to discuss and give us some direction on that. And then lastly, these are the capital improvements. I won't go through all of these projects, but the first year in 24-25, we're estimating just under $5 million or $4.5 million of projects. 25-26 goes up to 7.3 million. And then there's some larger projects in that third year, really related to the SSJD surface water. I put that one in the third year just because there's so much permitting that's going into that project. It's hard right now to know exactly when that's going to happen, and it's going to require the EPA and the processing of our documents with the EPA. So that's a real question mark. We don't lose the money, but just the timing of it with the EPA is a real question mark. And then we have the ACE transit station we're estimating in that third year as well. Debt summary, I include our bond obligations in the upper table there. The one I would point out, sewer bonds are about to be paid off in October 2025. And then our water bonds have been recently.
How come it shows up paid off, but there's
Three,
still a
but yeah, we have
balance?
a balance.
Yeah. Did we mess that up? Sorry, I may have been going too fast with my fingers on this last slide.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah, those are not paid off.
So you think it's 20-year bond? 32? 33?
Yeah, sorry. Last slide, I checked it.
I'd rather the balance be wrong
Right.
and the
Yeah.
payoff's correct.
Yeah,
Kevin, could you go back to the previous slide?
sure.
Just a question for you, or maybe James. Update me on what the plan is for well 9, the rehab of that. The rehab of well 9.
Well, I think the plan right now is to explore that site to see if there is the possibility of acquiring potable drinking water from that site. So doing some zone aquifer sampling, drilling a new test well deeper than the current well, and basically exploring it to either completely rule out the possibility of potable drinking water. But if it is there, then explore that further and possibly develop a new well. Or just drill that. We've got everything there already. So
Right.
it would be kind of a clean. If it's deemed that it's not, and it really just doesn't make sense, then we would look to get that well up and going onto our non-potable system.
Okay. Do you know the depth of the current well?
I want to say around 240. It's fairly shallow.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay.
James said it was 240 feet, exactly.
We're gonna hold you to it.
But don't
precisely.
quote him on it.
He just quoted you.
And then one other thing, as I mentioned on this slide, is we've had our economic development program. We did summarize the various, two of them, JKB and Happy Days, where they received an incentive and where they're at with paying those off. The Bow Country has paid off their incentive program already. And then water meter installation, this was a surcharge that was added to the bills, and we're getting close to that being paid off as well in 2025.
Kevin, I hate to keep asking questions on this. So our RDA bonds were established in 2020, and the balance is the same as the original debt? Don't we make payments on that?
We are making payments, but we set it up to front load it so we could get some savings in that. So we're saving. You want to explain that, Lisa?
No, I remember when we set it
Yeah.
up, but
For the first 5 years, the balance remains the same.
and we're using it as operating money because we saved.
Yeah, so that's the money we're using to fund the 115 trust.
I got it.
Yeah, I think it was about $800,000, $900,000 savings that we were able to transfer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. I remember. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So then you're gonna update this, send it out, and it'll be on the July agenda for action.
Yes.
Okay. Any public comment? I saw you two just really getting into this.
Kelly just liked the line about the chamber.
All right, thank you.
that mean? You liked it or you want a bigger amount?
Don't even
Both.
ask that question. You know the answer.
You went like this.
Jeez.
I want to know what our people in the audience.
No, you don't. All right, is that it? All
Mr.
right,
Mayor,
moving on. Item 3.
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing, so you do
What?
need to hit your gavel, open and close it.
Do I have to open it first? All right, public hearing is open. This is your last chance. Closed. All right, item 3, Ripon Consolidated Fire District 2024 Property Owner Assessment Ballots. You're on.
I'll continue with this one. As the city council is aware, the fire district has been working on a Prop 218 assessment to increase operating revenue. The city and the fire district 2 by 2 have been meeting regarding this assessment for the last few years and have been providing various updates to the city council and the fire district board. October 21, the city council approved an memorandum of understanding in an effort to support the fire district in the 218 effort. And what that MOU did was it detailed the roles and responsibilities between the city and the fire district going through this process. And also the city committed to pay for half of the consultant fees associated with preparing the engineering reports and the public outreach. So they have completed that process. It's my understanding the fire district board has approved the engineer's report, and they are sending out ballots here shortly. So the city is believing we're going to receive 85 ballots for the city-owned parcels within the fire district service area. And that assessment for 2024 is calculated at $12,956. So really tonight, staff is just requesting direction from the city council on how to vote on these ballots.
Got a comment and then maybe a question on this as well. I just want to say thank you to staff, Tom, Kevin, everybody who's worked on this for the last several years. It's been quite an interesting process. I'm glad to be a part of that, but want to express our support and encouragement for this to pass for the fire department, for my support anyways. One question I do have in previous Prop 218s that I've gone through as a consultant for different clients. There's been questions, maybe it's a question for Tom, but there's been questions about whether or not public agencies within the boundary of the district are obligated to pay the fees. And the reason I ask is if someone was to sue, about the process or something over this, could there be a case where, for some reason we couldn't pay this, or we're not obligated to, and then didn't pay it, and then the fire district would be short this money or something, I'm not sure where the legislation is at, and where lawsuits have landed on this. And I think it was a city of Manteca School District sued over their payment to a levy district.
Have they been given a chance to vote on that?
I believe so, but then they protested whether or not the public agency was required to pay for it, and I think there's been a couple different lawsuits on it, but I just don't know where it lands or where it's at right now. And I guess I just hate to have that turn out that public agencies aren't supposed to pay this. I mean, ultimately, if I think they would be too.
I think that was an issue. Governments there passing this stuff.
Yeah, it just gets passed on to the taxpayers who then, but I mean, it's like that's who we represent, so they should, taxpayers within our boundaries should pay for our facilities. But if we didn't pay it, they've just increased the value to, then people outside of our boundary would have to make up that difference, and that wouldn't be fair. So I think it's reasonable that, the city should have to pay, or, different public agencies in general should pay for their facilities, but I'm just not sure where the law lands on it. Is the question I have. But.
Yeah, I can't say I have any more knowledge than what I just said, so I can take a look at it.
I think different attorneys that I've worked with on it have had different opinions on it too, whether or not it's supposed to. So
that's shocking.
I know, right? But
Yeah, no kidding. Was the challenge coming from residents saying you're using my tax dollars?
I think the one that I think actually went through the system was the school district saying we're a public agency, we don't want to pay for this basically, and then but it went through, and I believe on that particular one they agreed that public agencies didn't have to pay for it, but then everybody inside the district just that fee gets paid one way or the other. They increase the amount on everybody else, so it balanced out the same. But
Yeah.
I just don't know. I want to make sure that if we're paying our fair share, that it's not going to be taken away for some reason because of law. So.
Worth checking into.
Yeah, worth checking into it. But I mean, if there's more discussion, go ahead. But I'll be happy to make a motion on this when we're ready. If we need a motion.
I have a comment to make.
Okay, your turn.
So I'm with you. I'm in very much support, and it's been a lot of hard work. You came at the right time.
Or the wrong time.
Or the wrong time. But everybody worked hard on it. Our staff, your staff, Dennis, Leo, the 2x2, our staff, in terms of trying to get this going. The thing that concerns me and why I'm very much in support of this, and I got all my ballots, and I'm getting some new set of ballots, and I'm going to vote the same on those. But the thing that concerns me from the things that I've read, and I checked with my insurance agent on, and correct me if the terminology is wrong, Chief, but we get an ISO rating, and ours, I think, is 3 now, and it goes from like 1 to 10. The lower on the scale, the higher your risk is considered from the insurance companies. And when I took a look at the amount that I just took one of the properties and said, okay, here's the amount that I would end up paying on this particular property. I mean, that was like maybe a 10% increase in my insurance premium. What concerns me is if we don't take action on this and the city doesn't understand, and that's why I'm saying this publicly, I think people need to understand that if our rating goes from 3 to, let's say, 5, and I don't know what the metrics are in terms of how they rate the risk, but if it does and your insurance premiums goes up, the difference between paying it to the fire department and to the insurance company, in my mind, is if you pay the insurance company, what it means is, for an example, in a fire, they're going to have the money to rebuild a completely burned out house. Whereas if it gets paid to the fire department, your response times are faster. That, yeah, maybe they have to cover a room that burns, but it's not going to burn down the whole structure. So it's going to cost everybody the same amount anyway. One, you save the project and when you don't. So that's the way I look at it based on my research with insurance agents and insurance companies. So I think this is something that's long overdue, and I'm glad you guys are pursuing it, and I hope the public sees it the same way. So I'm in support of it as well.
Mr. Barton.
Yeah, I'll just buttress what Councilman DeGraff and Ristouche have said. Had the opportunity to attend a few recent board meetings at the fire department, along with Mayor Zuber. And definitely the impression has been made. This is something that is critical to the ongoing performance and funding of our local fire department, which is one of the central elements to keeping Ripon the city that it is. I am loath to advocate for new taxes, both personally and for our community, but in this case, with all the revenue staying in the community, I am strongly in favor of this. So just wanted to add that.
Make an opinion on the insurance. A few years back when I was on that committee, we brought all that up for the 1 through 10 and Ripon's a 3 now. Like Salida was a 5, and the rates were about 20% higher in Salida compared to Ripon. But I think more important even than that is the fact that we have our own ambulance service. And I can tell you, I've been saved by that ambulance company a couple times. And then I've had, probably shouldn't say this, but there's another ambulance company in Modesto. I won't show you the service you get from them is like night and day compared to ours. And you know what's really nice is when the ambulance service comes out, you actually know them personally, and they really do care about you. You know, it's very, very important to me, and I would really pressure all people to vote yes on that, and I hope it happens because we could very well lose our ambulance service, and that's a huge benefit. And I definitely think we should vote yes on everything.
Do you have a motion?
I will make a,
Can I ask a quick question before
Yes.
you do the motion? When are ballots, the new ballots coming out, and when are they due back to the fire district? Vince is here, and probably would be good to put in an article if possible as well.
Hi, Eric Dehart, Fire Chief, Ripon Consolidated Fire. Thanks for the question. We don't have an exact date as of right now. They are still proofing the current ballots. And I know for sure they have to be out by the end of the month. So I think somewhere around June 25th would be the absolute last day that the residents to receive them. So I would assume the week before they should be being mailed out. Oh, I'm sorry. And then they will be due on August 8th at our regular scheduled board meeting, where they will then be open, processed, and then tallied.
One question. So tell me how it works, because there's different ways. They can either vote no and those count, or they vote yes, or how's it set up?
So
You
my
know.
understanding is it's a simple yes and a no. And each ballot carries a weight. So if your assessment's $250, you get 250 votes. So each dollar equals a vote of yes or no. So if you have an apartment complex and you're $1,200, whatever that might be, you then have 1,200 votes. Does that make sense?
So if 3 people send in yeses and nobody sends any no's, it passes.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's what I was getting at. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Now you can, Daniel.
I'll make a motion that we vote yes on all 84 or whatever, 85 of our ballots.
I'll second.
You guys can fight over who said
Yeah,
it.
No, I was fighting over.
Jane will decide. Any discussion? Any public comment? None? Okay. Do we have to do this electronically, right? Because this is still part of the, all right. Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. And then you will check on the status of Daniel's question and report back to us? All right, thank you. Chief, you're up.
Honorable City Council, all I have to report is our annual Explore Challenge will be held at Ripon High School this year, and that's going to be held on June 21st to the 23rd. And other than that, I have nothing else to report.
All right, Mr. Stevens.
Just, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Real quick, we are wrapping up our summer baseball, softball, t-ball, so there's a couple of weeks left of that. All of our summer camps and programs have already started, and we do have a movie in the park at Missland scheduled for July 12th.
Mr. Zeiderbart.
Just a couple quick items. We do have a meeting on Monday night for the Planning Commission. We have one short item on that agenda for right-of-way abandonment on Maple Avenue. Just a quick update on the battery project status. We did receive about a week and a half ago their final report for the plume modeling that they were putting together. So we've been reviewing that. We actually sat down with the new fire chief here, went through the project. They're getting up to speed on it as well. So I do not have a date yet as to when that will get in front of the Planning Commission for a hearing, but we will be working with the fire district closely to kind of wrap that staff report up and hopefully get in front of the commission so they can decide on the extension request or not.
All right, thank you. Mr. Peace.
Yes, two quick things, Mr. Mayor. Our water usage for the month of May was 25% lower than our 2013 numbers, but it was 1% higher than last year's number. And then our large item pickup program is still going on. It'll be available through September for residents to sign up, and you can sign up online or call the Public Works Department.
Mr. Terpstra, anything? Mr. Werner.
Report.
Nothing?
Several things. One is I want to publicly congratulate our new county administrator, Sandy Regalo. She lives in Ripon, so she's the second county administrator we've had from Ripon, the first being Manuel Lopez. Secondly, you all probably attended the Quick Whack ribbon cutting, and of course, you know, I left and Mona wanted my credit card, and we're on this all-you-can wash plan for all our cars and all that, so I never washed my car, now I do. But it actually turned out pretty good. I think they're still doing some fine adjustments in terms of blowing off all the water and stuff like that, but I think it turned out good. Seemed to be great people, great service. I'm just glad they're in town. That's it.
Mr. Barton.
Just wanted to preempt Councilman Graff. Thank you to those who attended tonight. Great,
man.
Great to see the kids from the high school. Yeah, get used to it, dude. Thank you, Chief, for coming this evening. Good to see you, and best wishes on the upcoming ballot measure. That's all.
Go ahead. It means more coming from you. I have no problem saying that.
Well, before I address Mr. Barton's comments, Kai, do we know what the movie is going to be for the movie in the park?
Jungle Cruise.
Jungle Cruise. All right. So
All right, I'm backing up.
I would just remind Mr. Barton that there is an election coming up, and if I'm elected again, I will cycle into the mayor's seat. So anyhow, thank you to you all for being here, and to the successful young children on their sports teams and the coaches and everyone for being here. Anyone who's listening online, thank you. Vince, I'm sure there's some good stuff you can write an article on about us. So thanks for being here. That's it. Thank you.
That was well said, Dan.
Yeah. Excellent. I just have one thing, and it's that we are in the process of, I guess, reorganizing is the best word, the recycling program. The school parent faculty clubs have all pulled out. They have great deal of difficulty finding people to work. Yeah, so at this point, we're using city employees to keep it open. We are in discussions with some groups that have expressed an interest, and we'll probably bring something back, I'm guessing, a few weeks. Okay. Probably 30 to 50,000, depending on the price of stuff.
Good job for the chamber.
The chamber? That's what I was thinking, Kelly. You want
They got nothing else better to do.
So anyway, it's still running. Hours are still the same. So if anybody says something, make sure you tell them that it's still there. And in the process of reorganizing, we are looking at increasing the hours that it will be open. Because hopefully the resulting increase in volume, which will increase money. So it's going, but it will be looking a little different as we get through this process. So
keep making changes, it gets better, it seems. So
we hope so. All right. Anything else? Hearing none. Meeting is adjourned. Don't leave. We have another meeting.
Want to make a motion for adjournment for the next meeting?
No, we don't do that. We just start and stop. All right. And this one, we don't need the electronics. I can just do this verbally, correct? All right,
Yes.
we're going to call the June 11th meeting of the Ripon Redevelopment Successor Agency to order. Roll call, please.
Director Mike Restuccia.
Present.
Dean Euchre.
Here.
Gary Barton.
Present.
Vice Chairman Daniel DeGraff.
Here.
Chairman Leo Zuber.
Present.
I'll make a motion, we approve the regular.
Wait. Now pay attention, because you may be sitting here next year, and I'd hate to have to say something.
That's correct. Or maybe not.
Public discussion, anything? Hearing none. Next item, approval of the minutes from the meeting of April 9th, 2024.
My motion still stands.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1, consent calendar, Urban Futures Incorporated. Do we have a motion for approval?
I move we approve.
What?
He didn't want to be
Where's
first.
the door?
No, he meant was.
Do
he
we have a
wanted to be
second?
first.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Apparently
Now he
not.
changes his mind.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.